Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is 7 after 8 o'clock. And before we link up with Mabrur Ahmed, he is in London, going to talk to us about the situation in Bangladesh. We're going to view a clip first of the devastation as it has played out in the past couple of days. So let's take a look at that clip, and then we'll be talking with Mabrur Ahmed, founder of Restless Beings. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. We are now going to be talking with Mabrur Ahmed, founder of Restless Beings. Mabrur, salaam alaikum. Are you there? I don't see you on my screen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, there you are. Welcome to the program. And we viewed a bit of a clip there. I'm certain you are aware of the fact that we here in South Africa suffered a similar situation in KZN with devastating floods as well. So, though, those clips and knowing that the people of Bangladesh are going through such difficulty and hardship, we can identify with it. We've had over also a huge number. The number doesn't come to mind right now, but we also have had a huge number of fatalities and lots of missing persons who haven't been accounted for as yet. What can you tell us now? Are the Bangladeshi people over the worst as we speak, or are they still being pummeled with ongoing floods?
I mean, even as early as this morning, the rains are still there. The Bangladesh is at the forefront of climate change. It has to be mentioned. It's probably the most flood-prone country in the whole entire world. It has flooding year-round, almost every single year. But the floods that we've seen in the northeastern part of Bangladesh, in Sylhet, in Sunamganj, these floods are worst for almost 100 years. They're once in a lifetime style floods. About 80% of the whole of the northeastern region of Bangladesh is currently underwater. In terms of fatalities, in terms of missing people, it's very difficult to even account for these because most of the area is completely unreachable.
Okay, undoubtedly, relief efforts are ongoing. And I should also like to think that international aid workers and, people trying to assist in any possible way they can are on the ground. Or is it too risky as we speak?
I mean, ourselves, we are on the ground as well. There are other aid agencies on the ground. It's becoming increasingly difficult to access the people. We are actually lucky and thankful enough to be able to work with the military and with the authorities in terms of getting aid to the most destitute, most desperate people. But it's proven to be very, very difficult work for many organizations, as is the case with many situations in Bangladesh. There is a huge expatriate population around the world, especially here in London, and people generally try to provide the money back to their families. But that at this moment in time isn't the easiest thing to do, simply because telecommunications are down, electricity is down. There is families are not able to make contact with their family members, etc. It's a very, very difficult task.
So it's a wait and see game for now. You have indicated that Bangladesh is the most a flood prone country in the world. This has been going on for years and years and years, hundreds of years possibly. And you're also suggesting that recently climate change is further impacting the situation. What are the authorities knowing, having these facts to hand? What are they doing to mitigate these type of situations in the future?
Well, I think it's very difficult for the government of Bangladesh alone to be able to take the burden of responsibility for this, because of course climate change is not localized; it's a global problem. And what happens is, around the world there are certain countries which are more flood prone, that are further beneath sea level. What we're seeing in the Sylhet region at the moment is almost the entire region that spans hundreds and thousands of hectares. Um, is about 100, 130 centimeters above water level at the moment. And while that doesn't sound that much, if you imagine, major riverways coming from India and from Nepal and from Bhutan, all coming in to create more than a meter's worth of water, surface level water, that means there are tidal waves of water that are coming and destroying homes, which are simply not built for purpose, not built for that kind of, to weather that kind of a storm.
I'm wondering what happens with rehabilitation after the floods have abated. How do people then, get up, pick themselves up, and start all over again? Must be pretty difficult. Possibly with certain people, it might even be near impossible.
Yeah, I mean that you're absolutely right. It's virtually impossible for a huge number of people. I mean, normally when the floods come to that part of Bangladesh, we're talking maybe a meter's worth of water that is above land, and that can kind of somehow be mitigated, because the water would have entered into homes, and then they can be rebuilt to some degree, or the floors can be relaid. Here in this situation, in this scenario, we're talking about homes being swept away altogether. They've been uprooted and been swept away altogether. And many trees and many livestock have been killed and destroyed in this as well, which means the protection that nature's way of protecting itself is no longer there either. I think one of the problems, sometimes with development work, with aid work, with relief work, is that in the immediacy, yes, there are people who are ready to provide food, but then what happens in the aftermath? As you said, the rebuild. The rebuild is going to cost hundreds and millions of dollars.
Okay, you've Restless Beings have come about, and you have started obviously some sort of a relief fund. I'm wondering how that has taken off in the UK. You obviously asking the rest of the world to get involved, and how you then going to be getting the relief funds or food stuff or whatever it is to the people that are most affected in Bangladesh, given that at this point in time, most people, the majority of the population in that part of the world, are not accessible at all.
Absolutely. I mean, thanks to God and to the generous donations in the last 24 hours since we started the fund, we've almost amassed more than £15,000, which, to be honest with you, is a little drop in the ocean of what's required. But we're very lucky. We have a very dedicated, very strong team who are on ground, able to mobilize quickly. We've worked in crisis situations before. I've been on Salam Media many times talking about the Rohingya crisis. We've been at the forefront of that. We've been in Gaza. We've been in West Africa as well, for fighting another climate change issue. Um, so we have the capacity to be able to act quickly, to move quickly, to be able to reach the people. Like I said, we're working with the military and with the authorities in order to use their kind of infrastructure to be able to reach the people. It's just a case of, can we get the money there quick enough? And there's a real need, there's a real urgency. It's been 5 or 6 days of these floods so far. This is the sort of time where people who might have survived the initial flood will now be perishing because they haven't had any food, or that they're unable to get to safe ground. Also, missing persons, the number of fatalities. This is the sort of time that we can expect that these numbers will start to grow in big amounts.
So, Mabrur, in terms of the relief that you're going to be forwarding on to the Bangladeshi people or the people that have been most affected, will it be monetary aid or will it be canned goods, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, monetary aid is not what's required. What's required now is hot food, because people cannot even eat, they can't cook. So hot food, firstly, for those who have made it to shelters, to rescue centers, and for those who haven't, then dry foods. As you mentioned, non-perishable goods, canned foods, biscuits, dry foods, these items that can immediately be eaten, and that's just for mere survival. Like I said, the rebuild effort is another monster in its entirety altogether.
Are you getting aid from other parts of the world, or is it
Absolutely.
just really the local community that has come to
No,
your aid?
Alhamdulillah, we are very fortunate. We're an international organization. We've lots of supporters from all over the world, in South Africa especially as well, across the US, across all
Alhamdulillah.
parts of Asia as well. We're very lucky in that regard. But like I said, the amount of money that we've raised so far is a small drop in the ocean. And of course, it's not just us that's working. There are many other organizations as well. And collectively, I'm hoping that we can do something to at least try and keep people alive for the interim period.
Inshallah, and undoubtedly, people who are interested in making contribution can just go to your website to source all of the necessary information. Would I be
Absolutely.
correct? Okay, brilliant. Something else that need to unpack with you. I came across a report the other day suggesting that the Rohingya people that are based in Bangladesh, that have been taken in as refugees in Bangladesh, are asking to go back home to Myanmar, suggesting that the living conditions in Bangladesh are totally untenable. And I'm wondering why there has been this cry for help and wanting to be repatriated to their homeland, knowing what the status quo is in their homeland. They are virtual prisoners in Myanmar, are they not? So, are we suggesting that the situation is as bad in Bangladesh for the Rohingya people?
You use the right term, unpack. I think the plea for repatriation is not necessarily because of the situation that's in Bangladesh. It's because it's been 5 years since the people have been thrown out of their land. They miss their land. They have a right to return. They are exercising, or they feel that through protest, they are exercising their demand for that right to return, their demand for their right to repatriation. Yes, of course, the situation in Bangladesh is untenable, but that's more down to kind of the logistical operation of it. Over 1 million people crossed the border over from Myanmar into Bangladesh, all within a very small geographical area where they are tightly cramped together. That's simply because Bangladesh is an overpopulated country more than anything else, and also that was with the available land at the time. So yes, of course, there are conditions that are imposed on the Rohingya by Bangladesh, which are unfanciful, that are untenable. For example, the lack of education, being cramped in small spaces, still relying on donations and on handouts. But more of the protests actually that took place on Sunday were about the ability to be able to go back to the land that they call home, Myanmar. The ability, and it's a call out to the international community to oversee that, to enable that, to make sure that that can happen legally, safely, and with dignity. It wasn't necessarily just a huge protest against Bangladesh. It's more of a protest of, they need to go back to their land. It's been 5 years. This was never meant to be a permanent settlement. It was supposed to be seeking refuge for the interim period. Of course, in Myanmar as well, there is a big political change that's happening there. The military is in a dictatorship, but there is a huge momentum of pro democracy in Myanmar, and the Rohingya are rightfully part of that. And actually, the National Unity Government, the government that's been set up to oppose the military government, is actually calling and welcoming the Rohingya to join that movement. And as a result of that, that's the reason why the impetus for the calls to return home have also increased.
Well, we hope and pray that if they do get back home to their homeland, the Rohingya people, that the conditions does change for them in Myanmar. I understand currently the children aren't even allowed education. They aren't even allowed any form of basic teaching. You know, and you kind of wonder what sort of a future would they have without access to education. So if there is this call and this reassurance that if they return home to their homeland, that those opportunities will open up to them, and their living conditions will be way better than they have been over the past couple of years.
I mean, that's the hope, of course. In Myanmar, yes, you're right that the right to education is very, very limited. In Bangladesh, in the refugee camps, children are able to educate themselves up until primary level. But beyond that, there is no scope beyond that. In Myanmar, it's much more difficult. It's much more restricted than that. But of course, that's the hope. The hope is that they return back to a different Myanmar. They return back to a Myanmar of hope, a Myanmar of change, a Myanmar of growth. And all the indications are is that if that military government can be removed and the national unity government does take its place as a democracy-led government, then the Rohingyas would be able to return back to Myanmar as rightful citizens. But like I said, at this moment in time, it's hope. It's what keeps people going. It's what keeps people in a cause to fight for, a cause to rally under. And of course, that requires international support as well, which to be fair has not been as forthcoming as it probably should be.
Mabrur Ahmed, wonderful talking with you. Our thoughts, our duas, and support in any and every way we possibly can is with the Rohingya, and you keep that flag flying as high as you possibly can with Restless Beings and all the other wonderful support work that you and your organization undertakes. Always wonderful talking with you. Go well, and salamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much, Julie.
That was Mabrur Ahmed from Restless Being talking about the floods in Bangladesh and the current situation of the Rohingya people wanting to go back to their homeland in Myanmar. It is exactly 8:23. This is News and Views on Salam Media. When we come back, we'll be talking with Councillor Mulungisi Mabaso about no service delivery to the Rivoli Retirement Village. So please stay with us.